Apparently, there is some news regarding King Charles and Prince Harry. And the news is that allegedly, according to the article I read today, that King Charles is having talks with Prince Harry to visit Prince Harry in the USA. So today I am going to look at the astrology chart of King Charles to try to understand number one, is this something that's likely to happen? And number two, what would be the motivation for King Charles to be reaching out to Prince Harry like this? Because so many people have been saying that the relationship is doomed, that King Charles doesn't want to have anything to do with him. So, what would make this change of heart? So, that's what we're going to be taking a look at today using astrology. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks to all my new patrons. Also, I practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which is the astrology from ancient India. If you're new to this, so your sign may be different using this method. The goal is 10,000 subscribers, and we're almost at 5,000. So thank you to you all. If you're interested in a private reading, check down below. I've changed the method in how people book readings. I'm using Calendly instead of using a website now. So it's really simple. You just click on the link down below and you can book a reading with me. Also, I want to remind you all that astrology readings are for entertainment purposes only. And also, all these statements about King Charles and Prince Harry, well, they're all speculation and interpretations of the astrological energies. So, I want to take a look at King Charles' astrology chart, not so much Prince Harry's. I'm more interested to see what would bring about this change of heart and what's going on there with King Charles. Let me pull up the astrology chart so you all can see that. Here's the astrology chart of King Charles here. And one of the things, or a few of the things we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the what's known as the Mahadasha and the Bhukti. So the Mahadasha right now is Jupiter. We'll talk about that. I'm going to have some slides to share with you on that. And then the Antardasha, which is the sub period, that's going to be Moon. We're going to be talking about that. And then also, because that's going to give us quite a bit of information, I'm also going to take a look at the Saturn transit that's occurring in the eighth house of Aquarius right now. So we're going to break down all these factors. Now, when we talk about the Vimshatari Dasha, these are the planetary timelines. These are times that a particular planetary energy is going to be emphasized in somebody's life. So right now, Jupiter and Moon are both of the planets that are emphasized in King Charles' life right now. So what we're going to be really looking at is Jupiter over here in the sixth house of Sagittarius. What does that mean? We're going to unpack that. And then also we're going to be looking at what is Moon represent up here in the 10th house of Aries. And you'll see I have lots of arrows, but there's a lot to unpack here. In Vedic astrology, we don't just look at where the planet is, which house it is in, but we also look at what houses it rules because all the planets have a lordship as well. Let me clean up the chart before we move on to the slide. Now, let's talk about the Jupiter Mahadasha because that's going to be the major period that we're talking about first. So, the major periods are very long. They can go from 6 years all the way to 20 years depending on the planet. So each planet has a certain length of time if you're running that particular Mahadasha. So Venus Mahadasha would be 20 years long. Jupiter Mahadasha in King Charles' case is 16 years long. We'll talk about what are the years that this influences right now. Let's go bring up the slide and I'm going to share that with you. And so we already talked about the first slide here about King Charles, the olive branch to Prince Harry. There's talks happening. We already brought that up. Let's go to the next slide. Talk about Jupiter Mahadasha. All right. So Jupiter Mahadasha, this is between 2013 and 2029. Like I said before, it's 16 years. And Jupiter's in the sixth house, if you remember. Now, let me just bring the chart up one more time just to kind of emphasize because I was kind of talking about all of them when I was talking first. So Jupiter in King Charles Astrology charts in the sixth house of Sagittarius right over here. It rules the sixth house of Sagittarius. So Jupiter's in its own sign, which makes it really strong. And then Jupiter rules the ninth house of Pisces over here. So these houses are very much active. Then when we look at the moon chart, because the moon chart's also incredibly important, the moon chart, you'll notice Jupiter's in the ninth house of Sagittarius over here in the moon chart, and it's activating the 12th house of Pisces. Now, the moon chart is over here, and it's just if you make the moon the first house. Okay, so that's all it is. When you reach the age of 50 and older, your moon chart actually starts to have incredible strength when we talk about uh, planetary energy. So it's important to look at the moon chart. So really what we're looking at is we're going to be looking at the sixth house, the ninth house, and the 12th house, since, what's double indicated is the ninth house. So the ninth house is twice. It's in the D1 chart and the moon chart. So that's quite interesting. Let me go ahead and clean this up really quick before we move on here. We're going to talk about a little bit about what does Jupiter mean. Jupiter, first of all, remember it represents children. So usually when somebody's running a Jupiter Mahadasha, if they have children, their children are very much on their mind. If you don't have children, sometimes it's a potential period of fertility when we're talking about, somebody if they're within childbearing years of age. But Jupiter in the sixth house is kind of weird because Jupiter's generally very optimistic kind of planet, but it's in the sixth house. So that energy of multiplication is multiplying what the sixth house represents for King Charles, which can be negative things. So for example, within the lifetime, he's going to have to deal with imbalance, conflicts, enemies, service, ill health, misfortune. We saw that ill health has already been showing up with the recent cancer diagnosis. And then we see the conflicts with the children, obviously, not necessarily with Prince William that we know about, but with Prince Harry. That's where we're seeing some of the conflict. So we see that the conflict with children has a very karmic in nature. The other thing I want to bring up about King Charles is, remember, Jupiter rules the ninth house of Pisces in his astrology chart. So the ninth house, we have to talk about that. The sixth house is the conflict, obviously, but the ninth house is all about being a father. It's about being a patriarch. It's about being a guru and a teacher. It's like the motivation to live up to these roles. And King Charles, I mean, the ninth house literally could be, when we think of a guru or teacher, well, he's head of the Church of England, like I've said in some of my past videos, which would be very ninth house. The ninth house also has to do with mercy, higher teachings, and things like that. So if you think about it, not only does King Charles love his sons and he loves his family, but also, what would that show if he was not trying to reach out with the olive branch to Prince Harry, being the head of the Church of England, not really living that example. Now, I know a lot of people say there's kind of a balance. Where's the balance between forgiveness and being taken advantage of? And that's something that all of us have to figure out. When do you forgive people? When do you let things go? Well, that's something that King Charles is probably thinking about quite a bit. Let me go ahead and switch slides here for a moment. Remember, we talked about the moon chart. The Jupiter's in the ninth house of the moon chart. It rules the ninth house and 12th houses. So it's a very spiritualizing influence right now. And let me bring that up one more time so we can take a look at that. But Jupiter itself, which is interesting, is a very spiritual planet. And then, and I'll just make this the moon chart for now so we can have a better view. And I'm numbering the houses just so you can see. Okay. So this is like, if we make this the first house, so Jupiter's in the ninth house again. So it's like a double whammy. And then it's activating the 12th house. Well, these are very spiritual houses. When we talk about Vedic astrology, the ninth house is about guru, teacher, dharma, religion. The 12th house is about meditation retreats, private prayer. So there's a lot of spiritual type of energies involved with these energies right here. So that's kind of interesting to take note. It's interesting when somebody goes through something like a cancer diagnosis, it probably does make somebody get into more of a spiritually minded, um, mindset. Let me go pull this up. So, rules the ninth and 12th houses, like I said, when we looked at the chart. Again, ninth house represents religion, teachers, higher philosophies, father figures, ceremonies. I mean, that's very much involved with the royal family. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance. The 12th house represents meditation, prayers, private spiritual practice, behind closed doors meetings, private conversations. Isn't that interesting? Behind closed doors meetings and private conversations. So these secret, maybe he is talking to Prince Harry that we don't know about. Behind closed doors would be the 12th house, right? Forgiveness, letting go of the past is all also involved with the 12th house. So when we're just looking at Jupiter Mahadasha, which is the major, more subtle energy, definitely this energy is more of a forgiveness kind of energy, more of an olive branch type of energy. Let's talk about the next period, which is going to be Moon. And the thing I want to bring up about Moon, let's look at the chart here. And I don't remember if I mentioned when Moon Mahadasha or Moon Antardasha it is. It's between May of 2024. So he's pretty recent in this, all the way till and I'm so September of 2025. Okay. So over a year time frame, he's going to be in the Moon Antardasha. So that's the sub period. That's the more acute energy where it's going to be felt more intensely. And so Moon, it's in the 10th house. So already there's this idea of leadership. Obviously, he's very much in the role. He's got are very much in the media, very much in the public eyes. That's what the 10th house represents: public responsibilities, leadership. And he's basically the head of this large organization. I mean, if we think of the royal family, or what the crown represents, it's more than just the king. It's really a large organization. So Moon, by the way, so we're going to be talking about what does Moon represent, though. I mean, what does it represent generally? It's in the 10th house. It's with Rahu, by the way, and then it rules the first house of Cancer. Okay. And if we look at the moon chart over here, moon, it rules, and I don't know if you can see it over here, but it rules the fourth house from moon. So these are sort of aspects we're going to talk about. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, what does moon represent when we're just talking about the general energies? Because that's something that people don't really think about, is like, what are the general energies of the planet? Now, I know that my picture's kind of blocking some of it. So Moon Antardasha, Moon 20, or May 2024, September 2025. I'm going to read it for you. A moon period can be a time of emotional sensitivity. The moon is associated with emotions, mind, and mental peace. During this period, individuals might experience heightened emotional sensitivity and fluctuations in their moods. So it's a time of being very sensitive. You're very sensitive. You're starting to think about the past. The moon actually represents the past. Like when we have nostalgia, we think about the past and the good old times that we had. So King Charles, maybe he's thinking about these wonderful times that he had with his sons, Prince Harry and Prince William, going to Scotland, all those kind of things. The moon represents family and domestic affairs. Again, he's thinking about family. There's this idea of wanting to bring harmony. There could be significant events related to family, mother, and home. It may bring harmony or issues in these areas depending on the moon's placement and condition in the chart. He might even be thinking, what would the queen want? What would my mother want? Would my mother want me to be mad at Prince Harry for the rest of my life and just like never let it go? Or would he say, eventually you need to try to make it a better situation in some way? Relationships and social actions are also social interactions are also part of the moon. The moon is one of these times where you're very sensitive. You're wanting to like get together with your family. You're wanting to make right those things that are important to you. So that's the thing I want to bring up about moon with this. The other thing let's talk about is moon is in the 10th house of public responsibilities. We did talk about that. Rahu, by the way, when Rahu's with moon, it can bring some turbulence and disrupt the home life and emotional peace, because Rahu's seen as a disruptive influence. So we can't forget that. Rahu's bringing in a little bit of disruption. So sometimes the Rahu can give us the impetus to want to act, by the way. Um, Moon is the first lord, remember? And Cancer ascendant people are usually quite sensitive. Um, for example, when we think about when I saw that show, The Crown, and I know a lot of you said The Crown is not accurate whatsoever, but it did bring up that story of when King Charles went to that school in Scotland, which his father, Prince Philip, had went to. Well, Prince Philip apparently had the time of his life when he went there. He loved it, that school in Scotland. And then when King Charles went, it was like a horrible experience for him. At least that's what was portrayed. And so it's because King Charles was a lot more sensitive of a nature than Prince Philip. Prince Philip was more sporty. He was more athletic. He's more outgoing. King Charles was more, according to Cancer Ascendant, a little more introverted, a little more introspective. So King Charles may be thinking about the past often, thinking about family during this moon period. There may be a natural inclination to want to settle this long-standing issue and bring some peace to the domestic front during moon periods. It rules forth from moon as well, and that's domestic concerns. So there's very much this idea of wanting to try to bring peace. I agree with this news story. I think that he's definitely going to be making an effort. There's also one more transit I want to talk about of what could be influencing this situation with King Charles, and that's the Saturn transit, which I know I've already brought up a lot for those of you that watch my channel regularly. But this really it hits home. So for those of you that are Cancer ascendant like King Charles, or if your moon is in the sign of Cancer, this is a really intense time right now with Saturn going through the eighth house. So it's usually when Saturn's going through the eighth house, either of your ascendant chart or your moon sign, it's usually a time of crisis. So I do want to point out the crisis can be many different things. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial, it can be marital. So the crisis can occur on one of those fronts. We already we already know some of the crisis with King Charles with the cancer diagnosis. Obviously, that's a crisis. And so there's a struggle for healing and recovery while Saturn is transiting the eighth house. That's the big point to bring up with all of this. Let me bring up the slide so we can really break that down again. So the Saturn transit in the eighth house, it's the crisis. The Saturn transit, it started January in 2023. This was right around kind of a lot of the drama with Prince Harry, too, I think, with the book Spare and a lot of that was going on around that time. So there was a crisis with even that. And then March 2025. So we're still in the Saturn crisis period for Saturn going through the eighth house. But the good news is it's less than a year. Saturn transits typically last 2.3 years. So when you're kind of in that last home stretch, which we are, a lot of things are going to be resolved. So a lot of you that have this transit going on, there's going to be a lot of resolution brought, between now and March of 2025. So Saturn in the eighth house, like I said, it brings a crisis on many levels. For example, the cancer diagnosis, but the cancer diagnosis is kind of like the wake up call thing, the symptom, I guess you want to say. But really, the issue is facing your mortality because Saturn can bring up these wake up calls in your life that remind you of the shortness of life, our limitations, how frail we are as human beings. And that's what Saturn's really doing. So Saturn's kind of the planet of he's like the great equalizer. Just like I said in another video, Saturn is the planet that makes, kings and, regular workers and presidents and CEOs. It makes us all equal. So, there is no one important in the graveyard. That would be Saturn. So we all are going to age and we're all going to end up there one day. Well, that's what Saturn would be. Saturn is the great equalizer. We all have to face that we're aging and that there's a finite, number to everyone's life. That's one of the harsh realities of life. And Saturn, that's why Saturn's so harsh. Saturn can also be bringing up an emotional crisis. For example, the family matters with Prince Harry. And obviously, more than just Prince Harry and Meghan, if we think about it, it's also Catherine, Princess of Wales. There's kind of like this general crisis in the family, if you think about it. It's a really intense time. So, for all of the drama that Harry and Meghan cause, this is what I'm saying at the bottom of the slide. King Charles may be thinking of his lasting legacy to his family. And we really have to think about that. I mean, he's thinking about his mortality. He's thinking about what kind of legacy do I want to live? And this is where we have to really think about it, because a lot of people say, well, once you've been bitten by something, you better, stay clear of it. But at the end of the day, he does love Prince Harry. And does he want to leave a legacy as an unforgiving father, not just a king, but a father, because we talked about the ninth house. So this is a really difficult decision to make. Um, and to be honest, King Charles hasn't been completely excluding and alienating Prince Harry by any means. I mean, Prince Harry has been showing up to the coronation and things. It's not like he was completely barred from that. Um, but there could be better, more inroads made with that relationship. Let me know what you all think down below in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, but I think that the astrology team tends to agree with this news report that I read, that there's going to be an olive branch that's extended. And I think that there's some things to work out with the Saturn transit. I don't necessarily think it's all going to be solved out till next year, but there could be some definite progress between now and then. So thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.